Yes, you can start. Good. Great to see you, everyone. Uh, I'm Solomon Marcus Solomon from Ethiopia. I teach in Addis Ababa University. Currently, I'm Associate Professor of Business Administration. My specialization is on in human resource management and organizational behavior areas. But anyway, HR is a part of every movement, and I do feel like Islamic finance as well can benefit a lot from the theories that we have, learned and teach in HR and organizational behavior, field. So actually, I'm not here to teach you about Islamic finance, and we Ethiopians have very infant, Islamic finance, industry. So I don't think that we have a lot of things to offer to the world in that area, because as we are learning to launch this industry, and as it is infant, we have a lot to learn from yourself, because this institute, the Islamic Economic and Finance Institute in Marmara University, offers even PhD program in Islamic finance areas. But this will open up, more opportunities for discussion. We have a lot of areas that are not covered in the Islamic finance research in African context, and I do feel like this will, help you to understand what Islamic finance looks like in Ethiopia, in Africa, in general. So the topic is nurturing human capital in Ethiopian Islamic finance, practices, pitfalls, and progress. And here I will mention what we went through, in launching and expanding Islamic finance in Ethiopia, what we can learn, from our pitfalls, the challenge that we have passed through, and also I will point out some, ways forward to strengthen that industry. As you may know, Ethiopia is a special, Ethiopia has a special place in Islam. It has accepted Muslim migrants from Mecca 2 times, and we have, a mosque at Negash, the Negash Mosque in Tigray, the region of Ethiopia, which was said to be established by the first, migrants of Islam in Ethiopia. So Ethiopia is not a Muslim majority country. However, Muslims and Orthodox Christians and Protestants lived together for many years, and the fact that Ethiopian government has also showed interest in investing in this sector also shows that how much, as a non-Muslim country, Ethiopia is becoming accommodative of Muslim nation. So it was also among the countries Islam reached early next to Mecca, and Ethiopia has also a sizable Muslim population, like 32, 35, because it has become like 20 years since we have made this population census. So that's why I put it in estimation 30 to 35% of the population out of like 130 million projected projected Muslims constitute 30 to 35% of that population, which actually shows a natural demand for Sharia compliant financial services. For many decades, most Muslim Ethiopians used conventional banking practices. There was no Sharia compliant finance or Islamic banking practice for many years. And nowadays we are rotating to more of the Islamic like microfinance. We have also Takaful insurance that we have launched in 2020. Recently, many conventional banks today give Sharia compliant services for Muslim people through their separate window. And recently we have established 5 fully fledged Islamic banks in Ethiopia, starting from 2029. 2029 signals a lot of progress that we have achieved in terms of regulatory frameworks. Ethiopia, started to accommodate Islamic finance. So following the release of proclamation 2019, number 1159 2019, the initiation to establish full-fledged Islamic banks has started. And also we have seen Islamic insurance companies using Takaful and also Islamic microfinance institutions expanded their operation. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, even before that, there were some practices, like, for example, the traditional rotating savings, like we call this eco. In Ethiopia, there is no interest in it. So you get your money after some time. So some 5, 10 people, save.
We have saved.
Yeah, like we have. So it looks like
traditional.
So it was there as a practice. Islamic microfinance run by NGOs, like the Muslim NGOs were there. So different religious groups had those kinds of practices. But the formal one, started more after the ratification of this proclamation in 2019. So today the market includes 4. Recently, the 5th one is also in operation. So we have also over 20 conventional banks offering interest-free windows, including the Commercial Bank of Ethiopia, the bank that actually holds like 49% of the share of the entire banking sector, is also offering this service. So fully licensed ones include Zamzam Bank, the first Islamic bank, Hijra Bank, Chevali Bank, and Ramis. These 4 banks, we have the 5th one also. Chevali has a start just now, actually. These 4 banks operate independently of the conventional practices. So what are the main finance service providers in Ethiopian markets? We have Islamic microfinance, which is very common in many parts of Ethiopia. Non-bank financial institutions also offer this service, like cooperatives, community saving groups, and also different microfinance institutions are doing that. And many banks, like I said, more than 20 banks, conventional banks, are having Islamic windows in their operation. Fintech and digital wallets are there, and also Takafu. Recently we have started this following the 2020 insurance proclamations. So the market is very sizable, by the way. Globally, the Islamic finance industry has like more than $4 trillion, market value. And in Ethiopia also it is growing. So the sector has been rapidly growing in terms of its deposit. One of the measures of the performance of Islamic banks. You can see that, across 25 banks, 15 microfinance institutions, and 8 insurance. The deposit mobilization is increasing, from time to time. For example, Zamzam Bank, the first Islamic bank in Ethiopia, has achieved like 38% increase in its deposit for fiscal year ending 2024. So it shows how this sector is growing in Ethiopia, and there is more demand coming from the Muslim people. So the demand is substantial given the Muslim population share in Ethiopia, like out of 130 million, 35% is a huge, significant population that can even make up a country by itself, So as of the end of March 2025, nearly 11,000 bank branches in Ethiopia are, providing interest-free banking. Actually, we started as interest-free banking, and Islamic banking, in its fullest sense, started to come in the market in 2019.
So these branches are from conventional one,
conventional
Islamic finance branch or the conventional branch?
No, they are conventional, banks, but they have a separate window for
Islamic window.
Yeah,
Islamic window branch.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So the sector is increasing, and appetite among small businesses and individual customers for Sharia compliant microfinance is also increasing. Especially, we have Muslim majority regions in Ethiopia, out of like 12 regions in Ethiopia: Somali, Oromia, Afar, parts of Amara, and some parts of southern, nation.
People have Somali in Ethiopia.
Yes, of course. We have a separate region, in Somalia. We call it Somalia region, a separate region for Somali, nations under the Ethiopian Federal Democratic Republic. So while demand is high, the sector faces, a number of challenges. One of the critical challenges that we see is the human resource-related challenge, the human capital challenge. So shortage of trained Sharia scholars, Islamic finance professionals are very low in number. So I'm not going to indulge myself in various, challenges that we face in Islamic finance, because there are many. Like, for example, there is no diversification of products. The products that they provide are very limited, like Muharaba, Mudaraba, and Wadia. Only these ones, which look like the conventional, banking practices. So for me, this indicates that the innovative capability of human capital is very limited, in this sector, and that's why I focus more on the human capital, aspect. So for human capital to develop, in this sector, recently I was reading a well-known, article published by the Indonesian and Malaysian, scholars on Islamic banks, and they have, come up with a competency model that suits, Islamic banking. Every industry needs to have its own competency, development model, because the, people that you educate, you train for some industry may not be, fit for the other industry. So we need a different model for, Islamic finance. So for this model, they used a well-known theory that we call the effective job performance theory. Okay, so Boaz in 2009 came up with this theory. Actually, this theory was there even before 2009, but it is Richard Boaz who gave it a life. So the effective job performance theory, argues that every industry needs competent people. So for competency to grow, you need to identify what skills, knowledge, abilities, and also behaviors people need that fit, to this industry. So if you have this kind of, human capital, then that industry will grow, perform well. Otherwise, by neglecting the human side, and then if you focus on the other aspect like technology and so on, it cannot work because technology is finally, used by whom? By the people. And even as technology gets advanced, we need more, people with this capability to manage the technology. So by using the effective job performance theory, they tried, to identify based on like qualitative research, the qualitative research based on the data that they have obtained from human resource development professionals working in Islamic finance in Indonesia. They have come up with very important competency building blocks. So these competencies fall in these areas. The first one, technical one, and then we have personal competency, social competency, and methodological competence. So a person is competent if he or she has all these, building blocks. The first one is technical competence. Now, when it comes to Islamic, banking or finance, practices, the technical competencies are related to, for example, good Sharia knowledge, because many people have knowledge of conventional banking and so on. However, this one is somehow different because it has a dual character. You need to have conventional banking knowledge and also Sharia, knowledge. And fiqh, muamala, this. What are the theories, practices that fit to this, finance sector? They have to know the bank's products and services. They have to know what products and services the bank offers. They have to know also Sharia governance, how Sharia works. They have to know also different, digital and IT, services that the bank offers. These are technical, aspects that any, worker should know. The other one is personal, competency. When we say personal, as a person, we are hiring people as individuals, not simply we are hiring their knowledge, skills, and abilities in separation from them. They are coming all with their behavior, with their own, stance, their outlook, and so on. So some personal, competencies are required in Islamic finance. Like, for example, religious commitment is a personal issue. For example, embodying the values of Sharia law, they have to know this trustworthiness, hardworking, obeying the rules and principles, or compliance with the Sharia, governance rules and so on. They have to know this. These are personal, competence. Other, competencies are social. Like, for example, personally, you might be good. However, if you don't communicate with people, if you don't work in teams, with others, again, it's problematic. You might not be, productive. So networking skills, skills in developing relationships, working in teams, communicating effectively with people, fall in these social competency areas. And also we need methodological competencies. For example, you may have technical ability, but you may not have analytical ability. For example, when a customer approaches you to solve a certain problem, how do you critically analyze this and then solve the customer's problem? So analytical thinking ability, the skills in solving the problems, making, decisions, a skill to resolve, conflict, all these required methodological competence. So added up all these four areas: technical, personal, social, and also methodological, competencies will make someone competent in this industry. However, what do we do really to help people build this competence? That's another important issue. So we can build these competencies through education, training programs, through mentoring, coaching. These are very important for Islamic banking, sector. So the human resource development practices might include training and different certification programs. Even when it gets advanced, it should be also supported with education, like degree programs, mentoring programs. For example, the more experienced people should sit down with the young people and then share their experiences with them, and coaching program, working with them and then showing them the way, active, for that's very important. So when you approach this through this competency development model, we can be effective in human resource development. Now, what are the practices in Ethiopia's cases as far as competency development or human capital is concerned? As I said, there are full-fledged banks. They recruit graduates in economics and finance, accounting, and other disciplines. And then mostly what they do is they try, to equip them with training and certification programs. So existing conventional staff are usually retrained for interest-free windows via different methods like internal seminars, short programs. Some university banks even send their people to abroad to take some trainings. So this has been the practice. And also, if you see Zamzam Bank, the first bank in Islamic finance, has a Sharia supervisory board, or what you call advisory committee, that sees whether the products fall in the Sharia governance rules and so on. So they work with these board members and train their people. We have also other practices, especially from 2019 onwards. The interest-free banks have started to use this, institute we call IBFI Institute. Actually, this institute has recently started its, operation in 2019 in collaboration with the International Open University, and mostly its programs are, online, programs. So they give bachelor degree and one master degree. So that is the only degree program available in Ethiopia. One bachelor degree, one master's degree. Who is providing this? The IBFI in collaboration with International Open University. Islamic Development Bank is also established in 2024. It's giving short-term courses. And other providers like Al Huda, CIB training, they give trainings and they organize workshops on product development and risk management. There are also online certifications from the same universities, and CISI, the British capital markets, accrediting, institution is also providing training, international certification programs. So no local higher education institution in Ethiopia offers a degree program. that integrates conventional one and then Islamic finance. So the key practices summary is mostly we have reactive kind of approach, like the conventional, people trained for conventional banks or finance institutions. They come and join Islamic, banking institutions, and then they are retrained, for the Islamic finance. So more of it's a reactive approach rather than a proactive approach. So there are actually attempts to emphasize both technical skills and Sharia knowledge, like we discussed in the competency model, earlier. So what are the pitfalls and challenges? There are a lot of progresses that we see in developing human capital in this sector, but there are different pitfalls and challenges. The first one is, lack of skilled human resources. Even who will train these people? TOT kinds of programs are very important in here. Acute skills shortage is here, in major gap, especially in higher education for Islamic studies. And many professionals rely mostly on online kind of certification programs and foreign certifications, and actually which increase the cost of training for these small banks which are emerging. So there is also awareness and perception gap, like you might expect. So when you attach Islamic this and that to the banking or insurance practices, many people do not understand it well. Even among the Muslim community, there is a knowledge gap. So low awareness, negative perceptions still persist. They limit both customer adoption and interest-free finance in Ethiopia. And without changing this awareness perception problem, many students, especially the fresh graduates, might not join this sector because they don't see career paths in this sector. Other problems, educational and systematic deficits are there. No dedicated local degree program, only those things that I have mentioned from the Open University, this online program usually. And students that studied abroad, say join Islamic, finance sector, like for example, friends like Murad might join, and actually help grow this sector upon their return. And also a friend of mine who was supposed to come here to do her, speech. She specializes in Islamic finance. She got her PhD from a well-known university in Malaysia. So some people are coming into the sector, and I think when we see these kinds of move, maybe there is more potential for that sector to grow in the future. And other, problems like regulatory and operational, problems are there. Like, for example, we don't have any, different legal framework to, oversee the Islamic banks. They are all under the same legislation that governs the conventional banks. And indirectly, this might affect the human capital strategy, the retention, maybe the future investment in training people. And despite these pitfalls and challenges, we made a lot of progress as a nation. For example, there are institutional milestones that we have reached, like, for example, the establishment of this IBFI in collaboration with Open University is one thing. And also Zamzam Bank has its own bank level training academy, which it uses to train even other banks. As employees of Islamic banks. And capacity building initiatives are there, like Islamic Development Bank and Institute and other international programs are providing trainings like TOT, train the trainers kind of program. National Bank of Ethiopia and recently Capital Market Authority has a roadmap to launch Sukuk, you call it Sukuk, This is a nice move, I think. So more progresses are emerging, and sector growth is also driving demand. So strong performance of windows for Islamic finance or interest-free banks and full-fledged banks demonstrates this sector growth. So what is the way forward? So what should we do? I'm trying to finalize my presentation. The first thing, my reading, tells me that we need to strengthen academia-industry linkage. So the banks, the finance institutions should work closely with education institutions like university. Then only can we really understand the needs and wants of these, finance institutions and support them. And also integrate interest-free modules into more universities. So, for example, when I was reading, about the Indonesian practice, what they did was they tried to include some topics in the existing, courses of economics, accounting, finance also. And gradually they moved on to degree programs. And nowadays they have more than 900, degree programs. And also they have hundreds of diploma, programs. So that kind of cautious approach can work a lot. And we also need policy support. For example, government scholarships for professionals in this area, national certification or accreditation programs. I mean, accreditation of, the Islamic finance or interest-free, programs can help. And awareness campaigns, like I said, there is a problem even among the Muslim community as far as the awareness is concerned. So awareness campaigns can help a lot, and we need also some concrete steps to be done by the banks themselves. For example, allocate enough human capital budgets. Actually, banks in Ethiopia, all of them, because of the directive of National Bank of Ethiopia, they have to allocate 2% of their annual budget for training and development programs, and some are adding more into that, and others are not using even the 2% as per the directive. So the banks themselves should invest a lot in education and capacity development of human capital in that sector, and international collaboration. For example, between Institute of Islamic Economics and Finance of Marmara University and Addis Ababa School of Commerce, the school that I represent. And actually, I'm also working as the executive dean of this school. So we can, forge those kinds of positive relationships to expand education in this sector. So the concluding remarks that I have, sustainability of this sector, performance of this sector depends on how we treat human, capital, and we have to, treat this as a strategic resource, because HR is a strategic resource. So some few, discussion questions I have, only two. Okay, how can Ethiopian universities better integrate Sharia and finance curricula? I want to get a reflection from you, maybe on this area. The other one is I was also looking at the Turkish, participation. You call it participation banks, huh? Participation banks. Starting from the naming itself, there are a lot of things that we can learn, from here. So, shall we go to Islamic banking by the name Islamic banking, or shall we find other ways so that we can get more acceptance from even non-Muslim, people and so on? Okay, so these are important issues that I want to bring to your attention. You may reflect on this. Thank you so much. And finally, I have to thank, some special people. Dr. Murat has been there supporting me throughout this mobility program. And I also thank his students, the former students, Murat, who connected us.
Yes.
And I also thank Erasmus Staff Mobility Program and the International Office of Marmara University for having me here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for a very insightful talk. We again appreciate your visit to our campus. Addis Ababa is the best university of Ethiopia. And also Ethiopia is important for the Muslim world, as we mentioned in the beginning, like one of the messengers of Islam. They came to Ethiopian king and asked refuge, and he treated them very nicely compared to other civilizations. African civilization, Ethiopian civilization had very positive connection with the Western world. Even people like Bilal Habeshi, Ethiopian origin, has very special part. And today it's also kind of reflection how still Ethiopia, as a country of like a Christian majority, Muslims are minority, but still welcoming Muslims, supportive for the Islamic finance industry. While many even Muslim majority countries in Africa doesn't have any Islamic financial institution, Ethiopia is standing as a good example compared to other African countries, even to European countries. So I think it is a very good example to see how we practice Islamic finance in Ethiopia and still promoting the growth of the industry with the harmony of Muslims and non-Muslims in the region. We are very happy to learn this experience from you. On behalf of students and also our staff, I again thank you for your presentation. You have two questions.
Yes.
We can share our experience.
Yeah.
Anybody wants to answer? How do we integrate Sharia and finance? You want to make some answer?
Yes. Better you answer because it's very general topics.
Yeah. Maybe short answers will be beneficial.
Okay. So I wanted it to, make it so broad so that you can reflect on this in your own way. No problem.
The vision is broad, so
Yeah.
wants to summarize it.
Yeah. So, for example, I was talking about this, the Indonesian practice. So I said they started.
Can I give 1 minute call?
Yeah.
You can talk to him.
So they included some topics in the existing, curriculum, and they also gradually started to include some, Islamic finance, economics, this and that kind of courses in the curricula, and then finally they came to launching a degree program, a fully fledged degree program, and so So, do you recommend this kind of approach, or that's what I'm trying to say?
That approach can be better because since the system is like fresh now, like nothing is inside, so you can just integrate it slowly by slowly. In a period of like 6 years, then you have everything in the system after 6 years.
Okay.
The same thing like in Indonesia, or what you can do, you can maybe send like there's people like professors or students who are graduated from high school and they are going to join university, then you send them maybe like to Turkey or Indonesia. So if you send like a number of 20, 30 people, their main aim is to graduate and go back and teach.
Okay.
That one can work.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
But so far the question is too big.
Yeah.
That is one small part of it.
So you support the Indonesian approach.
The Indonesian approach is the cheaper. The other one of sending people outside is more expensive, but it can be faster, and also the goal can be achieved in a given period of time. Like you can achieve your goal in 10 years.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah. And also the second question, maybe any reflections on that area?
Resource.
Yeah.
Turkish experience.
Okay.
Actually, in the early years, with the Islamic Development Bank, what was Mohammed Gamr, he is one of the founder of first Islamic bank in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
They established an institute, Islamic Finance Institute, in Cyprus, North Cyprus, in 1980s, to develop human resource for Islamic finance industry, not for Turkey, but also for other countries, so as an international institute. But this project failed after several years. But when they started this project in 1980s, they also established one Islamic bank with this school, with this university. So while students learn theory, they also have practice together in early years. They had this kind of project. And it was very successful in the early years. But because of Turkish politics is very volatile, after some time this project failed in Cyprus. They stopped this education and training. On the other hand, Islamic finance institutions, which started as special finance houses in Turkey, they continue their activities. So they continue their training their own staff because this kind of education programs failed and disappeared. They start to train their own staff. And also some people come from banks, some from government with different experience. They gradually create their own system of education and practice. They basically learn by failing and error, by error and learning system. Like they try, if it doesn't work, they innovate new products. So there is a great gap in Turkey in terms of education for long years. Maybe around 30 years, there is no education, formal education for training staff. Just some HR companies focusing on Islamic banks, some like internal education training programs in Islamic banks, etc. So until 2015, there were no program for around 30 years. And then some universities like Sakarya University, other universities, suddenly they started to launch new programs in Turkey. And also some people, of course, went other countries to learn. That was very few students went other countries to learn. So since then, we try to reconnect the industry and academia again, but still there is ongoing tradition and practices by Islamic banks to train their own staff by themselves, especially the old ones. Okay, but the new Islamic banks, especially their public banks, they don't have this culture for long years because they're just established 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 5 years ago. So these kind of new Islamic banks established by government, they have more tendency to have training with the universities. Okay. Yeah. However, also some Islamic banks, they are also welcoming university programs. For example, we have one program in Al Baraka Bank, Islamic Bank. We have a class in Islamic Bank. So that is an old Islamic bank in Turkey, but they are also welcoming this kind of partnership. So we have like very different practices like this. Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much
Thank you
for
for
the
having me.
presentation and
Yeah.
presentation, Prof. We can finish this seminar. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Maybe we can take photo together.
Yes.
Our director is not